Ron DeSantis will respect Florida voters' legislation decision at the ballot, even as state officials urge opposition, according to our favorite CEO at TrueLeave, Kim Rivers. CEO of a major marijuana company says she's confident Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican, will respect the will of the people and implement a legislation initiative if voters approve it at the ballot this November, even if he is currently campaigning against it. And as another top state official is arguing that a recent car crash allegedly involving cannabis is a reason to vote against the measure. Rivers, the chief executive of multi-state cannabis operator TrueLeave, that's financially supporting the Smart and Safe Florida campaign, also discussed efforts to strategically target advertisements to build support for the legalization measure amid recent polling that has cast doubts on its prospects of passage. In an interview with the Dales Report on Friday, Rivers again challenged surveys that have been released in weeks since the Florida Supreme Court cleared the initiative for ballot placement. She reiterated that internal polls show the measure passing the comfortable margin, despite the steep 60% threshold required to approve a constitutional amendment. Asked about DeSantis' recent comments opposing the proposal, and Rivers said she isn't convinced that the governor's position is, quote, 100% policy-based, unquote, and the campaign may be facing the criticism because it's a, quote, byproduct of the administration's opposition to a separate abortion rights measure that the court also allowed to appear on the ballot following an unsuccessful challenge. He said, I think there's a lot of strategic conversation right now happening on abortion, and then I think we're a little bit of a byproduct of that. I do think that Governor DeSantis historically has been absolutely a man who I think will continue to stand behind the will of the people once they've spoken. He added, look, I mean, getting over 60% of the electorate to vote in favor of anything is a tall feat. We'll have to go through implementation, but I do not expect or anticipate that Governor DeSantis put up massive roadblocks post-approval in November. Also discussed the recent launch of several advertisements in support of the campaign that are meant to educate voters and help close the gap ahead of Election Day. He said the media campaign is primarily focused on certain areas of the state where they know, based on their data analytics, that there are a lot of folks who are persuadable. He said, really, right now, we're leaning into those messages that we've already test messaged. The series of polls and questions and focus groups just see, again, are they actually effective and moving folks off of the maybe a likely yes or a neutral to an all the way yes or in the bank voters. So right now, the goal for the short term is to increase that number of in the bank voters to get as high as possible. Pardon the pun. We know during campaigns that once a negative advertisement starts, the number will naturally slip so you want to have that starting point, again, as high as possible. Smart and Safe Florida separately announced in March that it was working to form a coalition of veterans to build voter support for the reform, and the campaign has since formally launched that initiative. While opposition advertising might not have launched yet, state officials have made clear they're against the legalization measure. That includes, most recently, Florida Chief Financial Officer Jimmy Patronis, a Republican. Speaking with WESH2 News last week, Patronis said a recent vehicular accident that killed 8 people involving a driver who allegedly used marijuana and various prescription drugs, including Valium and Xanax, should motivate people to vote against the cannabis measure. There are 8 lives that are never going to see their parents again because somebody was abusing a substance that they have gotten illegally, he said, adding that while he recognized the medical value of cannabis for certain patients, he's a, quote, hard no on adult legalization. He said, I would err on the side of caution and vote no. Right now, just allowing the voters to go and make it recreational. Me, that's like giving a 9-year-old kid the keys to the candy store. Mm-hmm. They will abuse it and take advantage of it in ways that are not in the best interest of their own well-being. Once again, telling us how we want to feel. The Florida Republican Party also has officially come out against a marijuana legalization initiative this month, clearing the way for DeSantis to raise money to fund an opposition campaign against the measure. DeSantis also previously predicted voters will reject the measure initiative in November and argued that the passage would, quote, reduce the quality of life in Florida. Whether the officials' comments against the measure sway voters in a meaningful way is yet to be seen. While the campaign and companies backing the measure remain optimistic about its prospects this November, recent surveys continue to raise questions about that possibility. For example, a survey was done for the Florida Chamber of Commerce by Cherry Communications found that 58% of Florida likely voters back the legislation measure, compared to 37% who oppose it and 5% who are undecided. As Rivers pointed out last week, however, the chamber was actively opposed initiative. While the campaign hasn't shared its internal polling, it is the case that prior surveys have shown the initiative in a more comfortable position than the two most recent polls did. A University of North Florida poll released last November found that nearly 70% of voters are in favor of the reform. For example, economic analysis from the Florida legislature and DeSantis' office estimate that the marijuana legalization initiative would generate between $195 and $431 million in new sales tax revenue annually if voters enact it. Those figures could increase considerably if lawmakers opted to impose an additional excise tax on cannabis transactions, similar to the ones in place in other legalized states. Of course, they're going to do that. If approved, the measure would change the state constitution to allow existing medical cannabis companies in the state, such as Trulieve, the campaign's main financial contributor, to begin selling marijuana to adults over 21. It contains provision that would allow but not require lawmakers to take steps for the approval of additional businesses. Home cultivation by consumers would not be allowed under the proposed as drafted. Adults would be able to purchase and possess up to 1 ounce of cannabis, only 5 grams of which could be marijuana concentrate products. The 3-page measure also omits equity provisions favored by advocates, such as expungements or other relief for people with prior cannabis conviction. It's nice how they they omit that stuff. That's the really important stuff, right? Nearly all of the campaign's financing has come from existing medical marijuana businesses, predominantly multi-state operators. Recently, the Florida Division of Elections released the campaign finance activity report in the first quarter of the year, showing nearly $15 million in new contributions. Trulieve, the main financial backer of the initiative, led the pack again with $9.225 million in donations during the first quarter. That follows the company previously contributing about $40 million as advocates worked to collect more than 1 million signatures to qualify for ballot placement. The company CEO also said recently that, contrary to the governor's claims, legalization could actually improve the quality of life for Florida residents. Despite his opposition to the initiative, DeSantis, a former GOP presidential candidate who dropped out of the race in January, previously accurately predicted that the state's highest court would ultimately allow the measure on November's ballot. DeSantis also weighed in on another relevant cannabis policy issue earlier this year. While still a presidential candidate, he said that he doesn't believe the federal gun ban for state legal marijuana consumers is constitutional. Florida's former Agricultural Commission, Nikki Fried, brought a lawsuit against the Biden administration over the rule, though the governor did not get involved. And prior to dropping out of the race, DeSantis also said that if elected president, he would respect the decisions that states make on marijuana legalization, despite his personal view that reform has a negative impact. I'm Todd Denkin with High at 9 News, and honestly, I agree with Kim Rivers when she says legalization could actually improve the life for Florida residents.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Yarrow. Go ahead. Okay. Saman, do you want to call or text Kim real quick and tell her this is a cannabis show and not an abortion show, and we shouldn't be talking about that?
I
just want to know.
I only said the word abortion twice.
Hey, Saman, if you're on the phone and that's for me, take a message because I'm on High at 9 News right now. Okay. So
go ahead.
So here's the thing: it is absolutely not acceptable to ban home grow. To have modest abilities for people to create their own cannabis is a massive miss. Social equity becomes a little bit of the electric third rail because while the intention behind social equity programs is noble and needs to continue to be prioritized, the execution of most social equity programs has left a lot lacking. But not even trying to have that be a part of that, I think is a real miss. The other thing is like, can we all just agree, with the exception of Beck, that DeSantis is like not really the kind of person that I think has an insightful policy mind. And it scares me when he weighs in or opines, because if he's not saber rattling against Disney or allowing massive multi-level condos to collapse because they have a lack of safety standards in their construction, like, what does this guy do? I mean, all I know is he wears platform cowboy boots, and who does that? I just think that at the end of the day, this notion that he may accept the will of the voter, like, Kim Rivers was very polite and diplomatic in the way that she positioned it. But I think what she's really trying to say is that DeSantis has been a thirsty, headline-grabbing politician for a really long time, and often takes these sort of contrarian positions to really play to the press. And her hope is that he doesn't do this when and if this passes. The other thing I just want to point out as a footnote to this article is it talks about the person mentioning the 8 people who were killed or injured in a vehicular accident. And obviously, my sympathies go out to the victims and their families. And what is terrible about the way that that was quoted is, first of all, that person was allegedly on benzodiazepine. So it's not like cannabis was the only thing that's allegedly in their system. And then secondly, the quote from the person says that maybe they acquired the cannabis illegally. And so I just think that those are the kinds of things where if people are prefacing their quote with a maybe, then I'm just going to offer that maybe that's not a quote that should be covered.
All right, so here's where I stand on this thing. So that car crash that you referenced in the beginning of your story, Todd. I covered that story on our video this last Saturday of the top stories of the blacklist. So if you haven't got to check this out, you can check out that whole story there. Make sure you check it out. It's up on our page right now. So this guy that crashed, he admitted that he smoked weed the day before. Okay. Meanwhile, he's on his way over to the pain clinic to get his Suboxone. Okay, so this guy is, and not to mention there was some other drugs that he had done prior to that morning. And so this is basically just a page out of Project Sam's playbook that since he admitted that there was cannabis involved the day prior, we can utilize that to say that was the cause, even though we know that there's other substances that are highly involved within this crash, but they're going to use it as a scapegoat because it's all that they got. So that's for that part.
That's a very Florida thing to do.
I mean, as it pertains with Kim Rivers and her statements, I don't know why anyone is paying attention to her and this statement, because Ron DeSantis is strictly about the Constitution and whatnot, and so to think that he wouldn't support something because it's not what he wanted, but it's what the people wanted. I don't even know why that's news. I don't find that to be newsworthy. Personally,
look what he did with Disney and the charter that they had with Florida.
He should be doing that with Disney. I'm in support.
Somebody
of that.
Writes him a big check. He's going to go in that direction.
Hold on, slow down. Let me finish. Let me finish the thought. Let me finish the thought with the meatball Ron. Okay. Now with meatball Ron, this is the thing: is that all that Kim Rivers and them are doing is trying to stage and posture right now, because everybody knows that this ballot initiative is not going to pass in Florida because it has to get 60% or greater. It's going to pass by like 53 to 55%, something like that. That's where it's going to pass at when it passes when it gets voted on in November. But the fact that they are construing this and saying that the amendment didn't pass, I think is misguiding and trying to throw water on the fire of the people that are pushing the movement to legalize cannabis in the state of Florida, because ultimately it's going to pass by greater of a percentage of a population, but because they're changing the Constitution in the state, it has to pass that 60% threshold. So therefore, if it was in other states or whatnot, and all you have to do is win a majority, then technically it would pass. But because how their law works out there, that's not how it necessarily works, even though it technically would have passed.
60% is a tough number.
It's a big number. It is. It's a big number. It takes a lot of work.
Yep.
A lot of money.
It does. Yeah.
Lots of money.
Hang outside, the strip club out there and get that support.
Oh yeah, and sell Girl Scout cookies.
That's right. Support single moms.
KOD.
Support single moms. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. On that, we're going to go to a commercial and we're going to be right back. Support single moms.